welcome to God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson. Reach him at gods5minutes@gmail.com. Now, here's Ed Wilson with God's 5 Minutes.
Hello, friends. The first two verses of the 54th Psalm read, "Save me, O God, by thy name, and judge me by thy strength. Hear my prayer, O God. Give ear to the words of my mouth." Our understanding of David's deeper meaning can be improved by some background. The caption of the psalm, for instance, reads, "To the chief musician of Neginoth, Mashil, a psalm of David, when the Ziphites came and said to Saul, Doth not David hide himself with us?" Ziph was a village in the southern part of Palestine. David had taken refuge in the mountains of that country, but the Ziphites were no friends of his. They betrayed him to Saul, who immediately moved with his army to capture the innocent but hunted fugitive, and soon was on one side of a mountain while David was on the other. Probably this was the moment when David poured out his heart to God in the potent words of prayer in this psalm. Just when escape began to seem impossible, a message came to Saul that the Philistines had invaded the land, so that he was obliged to stop wasting time and resources in his selfish, cruel quest to destroy the man he thought might threaten his throne, and return to his real duties of defending the Israelite nation. David's dilemma took place simply and entirely because Samuel, without David's having done anything to cause him to do so, had come to Bethlehem to anoint him as successor to Saul, whose royal blessing had been withdrawn because of his rebellion. When he had had opportunity to defend and rid himself of his oppressor, he had forborne to do so because God had put Saul in office and David would not violate that. But Saul's darkened heart knew neither such niceties of ethics nor common human compassions, and sometimes it seemed he made his life's quest to destroy the young hero. So now, with only the breadth of the mountain to separate him from Saul's fury, and the morning likely to see his capture and the end of his life, with God's promise unfulfilled, David, having nowhere else to go, turned to prayer. "Save me, O God, for thy name," he cried. And there is no stronger appeal that any of us can make. As a child of devout Israelite parents, he had been taught all his life never to use that hallowed name vainly. It was only to even be uttered in the most reverent circumstances. David told Goliath, "I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts." Psalm 20 reads, "We will rejoice in thy salvation, and in the name of our God we will set up our banners." Proverbs 18:10, "The name of the Lord is a strong tower, the righteous runneth into it and is safe." The second clause in David's prayer pleads with God to judge him by his strength. Rather than look any farther for what means of escape David lay before him, David invited God to examine the intimate corners of his life, to do it by the terrible judgment power of righteous indignation, and see if there was cause in his past why God should not be his defense. If we stand guilty before God, he may yet deliver us because of his mercy. But there is a place beyond that where those whose lives dare investigation by him, who cannot be deceived, who alone knows every motive of our secret hearts, can be made obligated to, having examined us in the strength of his righteousness, take our defense in the cause of truth and holiness. David had a walk with God that enabled him to reach for that higher protection. It is a temptation when we cry in utmost distress to try to frame how God might answer us. David was being pursued by a vengeful man and an army. God's answer was to use another army, but not such a one as we would ever suspect of being any benefit to such a future opponent as David proved to be to them. He sent the Philistines on a rampage against Israel. Perhaps there was not one devout man among this heathen horde, but that did not prevent God at all from using them to his purpose. In this same way, he still uses the mighty of the earth as he will to the advantage of his little ones. We serve a great God, friends, and he is able to protect and keep his people in the darkest of circumstances. Have you talked to him today?
You have been listening to God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson. Reach him by email at godsfiveminutes@gmail.com. Tune in next time to hear more encouraging thoughts from God's Word on God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson.